The blood on Ophelia Crawford's knees had long since dried into the cracks of the hotel floorboards, mixing with the lye soap that burned her raw hands as she scrubbed in endless circles, wondering if this was all her life would ever be. Fort Stanton, New Mexico Territory, in the summer of 1878 was a place where dreams came to die for women like her. Women who had nothing but their labor to sell and not even the dignity to command a fair price for it. The Silver Star Hotel was the finest establishment in town, which meant it attracted the dirtiest boots and the most demanding guests. And Ophelia had been on her knees since 4 that morning, working her way down the second-floor hallway, one stubborn stain at a time. She was 21 years old, though most days she felt twice that. Her dark blonde hair hung in a limp braid down her back, strands escaping to stick to her damp forehead. The gray dress she wore had been mended so many times that it was hard to say what the original fabric had been. It hung loose on her thin frame, testament to too many skipped meals so she could send money back to her sister in Missouri. That sister, Emma, was the only family she had left after the fever took their parents 3 years ago. Emma was married now with a baby on the way, and Ophelia told herself that her sacrifice meant something, even on days like today when her back screamed and her stomach growled. "You missed a spot." Ophelia looked up to see Mrs. Thornton, the hotel proprietress, pointing a thick finger at a section of floor that looked identical to every other section Ophelia had already scrubbed twice. The older woman's face was set in its perpetual expression of dissatisfaction, her mouth a thin line beneath her prominent nose. "Yes, madam," Ophelia said quietly, dipping her brush back into the bucket of gray water. "And when you finish this floor, the dining room needs setting for supper. We have a cattle buyer coming through and I expect everything to be perfect." "Yes, madam, Mrs. Thornton's skirts rustled as she walked away, and Ophelia allowed herself a moment to close her eyes and breathe. Just breathe. She had been working at the Silver Star for 8 months now, ever since she arrived in Fort Stanton with nothing but the clothes on her back and $2 to her name. The work was brutal, and the pay was barely enough to keep her in the tiny room she rented above the general store, but it was honest work. That was more than some women in this town could say. The sound of boots on the stairs made her press closer to the wall, making herself small as she always did when guests passed. Most men ignored her entirely, which was how she preferred it. Some made comments that burned her ears. A very few looked at her with something like pity, which somehow felt worse. These boots stopped. Ophelia kept her eyes on the floor, on the brush moving in circles, pretending she had not noticed. "Madam, that looks like hard work." The voice was low and warm, with the slow drawl of someone who never felt the need to rush his words. Despite herself, Ophelia glanced up. The man standing over her was tall and lean, with the sun-weathered face of someone who spent his life outdoors. He could not have been much older than she was, perhaps 24 or 25, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes that struck her immediately as kind. He wore the practical clothing of a working cowboy: denim trousers, a chambray shirt with the sleeves rolled up, a vest that had seen better days, and a hat he was currently holding in his hands. His boots, she noticed, were dusty but not muddy. He had made an effort not to track dirt inside. "It is what it is, sir," she said carefully, returning her attention to the floor. "I am sorry. I did not mean to interrupt. I just thought you might like to know you dropped this." He crouched down, bringing himself closer to her level, and held out a small cloth. It took Ophelia a moment to recognize it as the handkerchief she kept tucked in her sleeve, the one small nice thing she owned. It had belonged to her mother. Her hand flew to her sleeve, finding it empty, and a small sound of distress escaped before she could stop it. "Thank you," she said, reaching for it. Their fingers brushed briefly as she took it, and she was startled by the warmth of his hand, the calluses that spoke of hard work not unlike her own. "You are welcome." He stood, and she thought that would be the end of it, but he lingered. "I am Adam Vance. I have a ranch about 10 miles west of here. I am in town for supplies." Ophelia did not know what to say to that. Men did not introduce themselves to hotel maids. "That is nice for you, sir. What is your name?" She hesitated. "Ophelia Crawford. Miss Crawford, might I ask you something?" "I should get back to work, sir. Of course. I am sorry." But he still did not move. "I just wanted to ask if you are happy here, working like this." The question was so unexpected, so presumptuous, that Ophelia sat back on her heels and really looked at him. His expression was earnest, without a trace of mockery. "I do not see how that is your concern, Mr. Vance. You are right. It is not my concern. I apologize." He put his hat back on, adjusting it. "I hope the rest of your day is pleasant, Miss Crawford." He walked past her then, his boots quiet on the stairs, and Ophelia was left staring after him, confused and oddly flustered. In all her months of scrubbing floors, no one had asked if she was happy. No one had cared. She shook her head and returned to work. Strange men and strange questions had no place in her life. She had floors to clean. But that night, lying on her narrow bed in her tiny room, staring at the ceiling and listening to the sounds of Fort Stanton settling down for sleep, she found herself thinking about Adam Vance and his kind eyes. Thinking about his question. Was she happy? No. She was not happy. She was surviving, which was not the same thing at all. The next day was Sunday, her half-day off. Ophelia washed her dress and her single spare shift in the basin, hanging them to dry on the line behind the general store. She mended a tear in her stocking and wrote a letter to Emma, filling it with cheerful lies about how well she was doing. Then, because the afternoon stretched ahead with nothing to fill it, and she could not bear to spend it within four walls, she walked to the edge of town. Fort Stanton was not large. It had sprung up around the military post of the same name, serving the soldiers and the ranchers and the miners who worked in the surrounding hills. The main street boasted a general store, a saloon, a doctor's office, a church, the Silver Star Hotel, and a handful of other establishments. Beyond that, the land opened up into the vast New Mexico Territory landscape, all rolling hills and distant mountains and sky that went on forever. Ophelia walked until the sounds of town faded, until there was nothing but the whisper of wind through the grass and the cry of a hawk overhead. She sat on a large rock and simply breathed, letting the space and silence fill her up. This was what she loved about the West, even if the West did not love her back. This feeling of endlessness, of possibility, even if that possibility was not for someone like her. Seems we had the same idea. Ophelia jumped, her heart hammering, and turned to find Adam Vance approaching on horseback. He sat easy in the saddle, as comfortable as some people were in their favorite chairs. As he drew closer, he dismounted smoothly. "I am sorry," he said, holding up a hand. "I did not mean to startle you. I was just riding out to check on my herd and I saw someone sitting here. I wanted to make sure everything was all right." "I am fine," Ophelia said, standing and brushing off her skirt. "I should head back. Please do not leave on my account. This is open land. You have as much right to be here as I do." He tied his horse to a scrubby bush and, to her surprise, sat down on the ground, apparently content to stay. "It is a beautiful afternoon." Ophelia did not know what to do. Every instinct told her to leave, to put distance between herself and this strange man who seemed determined to talk to her. But another part of her, a part she had been ignoring for months, was desperately lonely and starved for simple human kindness. "It is," she agreed, sitting back down but keeping a careful distance between them. They sat in silence for a while. It should have been awkward, but somehow it was not. Adam seemed content to simply exist in the space, watching the landscape with the same quiet appreciation she felt. "How long have you been in Fort Stanton?" he asked eventually. "8 months. Where are you from originally, Missouri?" "That is a long way." "Yes. Do you have family there, a sister? You must miss her." Something about the gentle way he said it made Ophelia's throat tighten. "Every day." "Why did you come here?" The question was not unkind, just curious, but Ophelia felt herself bristle. "That is a very personal question, Mr. Vance. You are right, I am sorry. I do not mean to pry, I suppose I am just trying to understand." "Understand what?" "How someone like you ends up on her knees scrubbing floors in a place like this." "Someone like me?" Her voice sharpened. "What do you know about someone like me?" Adam looked at her, and there was no judgment in his eyes, only sadness. "I know you are educated. I can hear it in the way you speak. I know you have pride, even though your circumstances would give you every reason not to. I know you work harder than most men I have met, and I would bet money you are not paid half what you deserve." Ophelia stared at him. "You gathered all that from watching me scrub a floor." "I gathered it from watching how you hold yourself, from the fact that you are out here on your day off, choosing the middle of nowhere over the town, from the way you looked when I asked if you were happy." He picked up a pebble and tossed it gently. "You are better than the life you are living, Miss Crawford. That is obvious to anyone who bothers to look." "And yet this is the life I have," Ophelia said bitterly. "Wanting better does not make it so." "No," Adam agreed. "But sometimes we get chances we do not expect." "Like what?" He turned to face her fully. "Come work for me." Ophelia blinked. "What?" "I need someone to help with the house. I have been managing on my own, but the place is falling apart. I can cook enough to keep from starving, but that is about it. I need someone who can cook, clean, maybe help with the garden I have been trying and failing to maintain. I will pay you $30 a month, room and board included. You will have your own room, your own space. I will not bother you, and I will not make demands beyond the work itself. $30 a month." Ophelia made 12 at the hotel. Room and board included would mean she could actually save money, send more to Emma, maybe even someday have enough to bring her sister west if she wanted to come. "Why?" Ophelia asked. "You do not know me. I know enough. You know nothing. I could be a thief. I could be lazy. I could be running from the law. Are you any of those things?" "No, but you have no way of knowing that." Adam smiled, and it transformed his face, made him look younger. "I am a good judge of character, Miss Crawford. Call it a feeling. I do not take jobs based on strange men's feelings." "Fair enough." He stood, dusting off his trousers. "But think about it. The offer stands. If you decide you are interested, I am at the ranch 10 miles west. Follow the main road and turn north at the lightning-struck tree. You cannot miss it." He untied his horse and mounted, looking down at her. "It was nice talking with you, Miss Crawford. I hope to see you again." He rode off, leaving Ophelia sitting alone with her thoughts in turmoil. It was a trap. It had to be. No man offered a woman a job like that, with such generous terms, without expecting something in return. She would arrive at his ranch and find out what he really wanted, and it would not be cooking and cleaning, except something in his eyes had been genuine. Something in the way he spoke to her, like she was a person worth listening to, worth caring about. Ophelia did not return to the rock after that, afraid she would run into Adam again and be forced to give him an answer. But she could not stop thinking about his offer. $30 a month. Her own room. Space to breathe, away from Mrs. Thornton's constant criticism and the pinched, desperate life she was living. 3 days later, Mrs. Thornton accused her of stealing a silver spoon that turned up 10 minutes later in the kitchen. She did not apologize. That afternoon, one of the hotel guests cornered Ophelia in the linen closet, and she had to shove him hard to get away, earning herself a bruised wrist and a reprimand from Mrs. Thornton for being rude to a paying customer. That night, Ophelia counted her money and realized she could not afford both rent and food for the rest of the month. The next morning, she gave Mrs. Thornton notice. "You ungrateful girl," the older woman spat. "After everything I have done for you, where do you think you will go? No one else in this town will hire you." "I have another position," Ophelia said, keeping her voice level. "Where? That is my business. You will be back within a week begging for your job, and I will not have you." "I understand." Ophelia packed her few belongings into the carpet bag she had arrived with. 2 dresses, a spare shift, her mother's handkerchief, the letters from Emma, and the small Bible that had belonged to her father. Everything she owned in the world fit in one small bag. She settled her bill at the general store and spent the last of her money on supplies for the journey: bread, cheese, and a canteen of water. Then she set out walking west. The day was hot and the road was dusty, and by the time Ophelia spotted the lightning-struck tree Adam had mentioned, her feet were blistered and her mouth was dry. She turned north as he had instructed, and after another mile, she saw the ranch. It was smaller than she had expected, more homestead than grand ranch. The house was a simple wooden structure with a covered porch, weathered but solid. Behind it stood a barn, a corral with several horses, and what looked like a chicken coop. The land stretched out in all directions, open grazing land dotted with cattle in the distance. Ophelia stood at the edge of the property, suddenly uncertain. What was she doing? She had walked 10 miles based on a conversation with a stranger. This was insane. Before she could decide whether to approach or turn back, the front door opened and Adam stepped out. He shaded his eyes against the sun, then started walking toward her. As he got closer, she saw the surprise on his face shift into something that looked like pleasure. "Miss Crawford," he said. "You came." "I did." Her voice came out more timid than she had intended. "Your offer, does it still stand?" "It does." "I need to know something first." "Anything." Ophelia met his eyes. "What do you really want from me?" Adam did not look away. "I want help managing a home that is too much for one person. I want someone who can cook a decent meal. I want someone who knows how to make a house feel less empty." He paused. "And I want to help someone who deserves better than what she has been getting. That is all, Miss Crawford. I promise you, that is all." "Why should I believe you?" "Because if I wanted something else, I would not have offered you your own room with a lock on the door. Because I would not have told you that you are free to leave at any time if you are unhappy. Because I am trying to build something decent here, and decent things require decent people." He gestured at the house. "Come see the place before you decide. If you do not like what you see, I will hitch up the wagon and drive you back to town myself." Ophelia looked at the house, at the land, at Adam's open, honest face. Then she took a breath and nodded. "All right, show me." The house was indeed falling apart, though not in the way she had feared. It was clean enough, but everything spoke of a man living alone without the skills or time to properly maintain a home. The windows were dusty. The floors needed sweeping. The kitchen was functional but chaotic, with pots and pans stacked haphazardly. There were no curtains, no rugs, nothing soft or welcoming, but the structure was sound. The roof did not leak. The stove worked. And when Adam showed her the small room that would be hers, Ophelia felt something in her chest loosen. It was tiny, barely large enough for the narrow bed and the chest of drawers it contained. But it had a window that looked out over open land. It had a door with a lock, just as he had promised, and it was hers. "What do you think?" Adam asked from the doorway. Ophelia set her carpetbag on the bed. "When do I start?" The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise. "How about tomorrow? You have had a long walk. Rest today, settle in. I will show you around the property and we can start fresh in the morning." "I do not need rest. I can start now." "Miss Crawford, when was the last time you took a day just for yourself?" She could not remember. "Today," Adam said firmly. "Rest today. There will be plenty of work tomorrow, I promise you that." He was true to his word. He showed her the property, introducing her to his handful of horses and the chickens, and explaining his plans for expanding the herd. He cooked supper that evening, a simple meal of beans and bacon that was plain but filling. They ate on the porch as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that took Ophelia's breath away. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For giving me a chance." Adam looked at her, his expression serious. "Thank you for taking it." That night, Ophelia lay in her own bed in her own room, listening to the silence of the ranch. It was so different from town, from the constant noise of the hotel. Here there was only the whisper of wind, the distant lowing of cattle, the creak of the house settling. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Ophelia felt safe. The work was hard, but it was a different kind of hard than the hotel. At the ranch, the work felt purposeful. When Ophelia scrubbed the floors, she was caring for her own space, not toiling for someone who barely saw her as human. When she cooked, she was feeding not just Adam but herself, sitting down to meals at a real table instead of eating scraps standing up in the kitchen. Adam was an easy person to work for. He was respectful, keeping his distance but always ready with a kind word or a joke when the work got tedious. He never made demands, only requests. He noticed when she did something well and said so. Within a week, Ophelia felt more valued than she had in months. But more than that, she found herself enjoying his company. They fell into a routine. Mornings, Adam would be up before dawn to tend the animals and ride out to check on the herd. Ophelia would start breakfast, the smell of coffee and biscuits filling the house. They would eat together, talking about the day ahead. Then Adam would head out for his work while Ophelia tackled the house, the garden, the endless tasks that kept a ranch running. Evenings, they would sit on the porch after supper, too tired to do much but watch the sky change colors. And they would talk. Ophelia learned that Adam was 25, that he had come to New Mexico territory 3 years ago with dreams of building something of his own. He had worked as a ranch hand, saving every penny until he had enough to buy this land and a handful of cattle. He was building his herd slowly, carefully, refusing to take loans he could not afford to repay. He wanted something solid, something lasting. "My father lost everything to bad debts," Adam told her one evening. "I watched it destroy him, destroy my mother. I swore I would never do that, never build my life on borrowed money and false promises." "Where are your parents now?" Ophelia asked. "Gone. My father drank himself to death and my mother followed not long after. I think she died of a broken heart." He stared out at the darkening landscape. "That is why I am out here. I needed to get away from those memories, start fresh." "I understand that," Ophelia said softly. "What about you? Why did you really come west?" It was the first time he had asked directly, and Ophelia found herself wanting to answer. "My sister married a man who did not want me living with them. He said it was charity he could not afford." Emma tried to argue, but I could see it was causing problems between them, so I left. I thought I could find work, send money back, make my own way. That must have been hard. It was necessary. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. Ophelia looked at him, and the understanding in his eyes made her throat tight. "No," she agreed. "I suppose they are not." As the weeks passed, Ophelia found herself looking forward to those evening conversations more than anything else in her day. Adam was easy to talk to, genuinely interested in what she had to say. He asked her opinions on everything from the best way to organize the kitchen to his plans for the ranch. He listened when she spoke, really listened, like her thoughts mattered. It was intoxicating, being treated like she had value. She tried not to notice how her heart sped up when she heard his boots on the porch at the end of the day. Tried not to pay attention to the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, or how gentle his hands were when he showed her how to handle the horses. Tried not to care about the sound of his laugh or the way he always made sure she ate enough at meals, serving her first as if she were a guest instead of an employee. But she did notice. She cared, and that terrified her, because this was a job, nothing more. Adam had been clear about that. He had offered her work, not romance. He was kind to her because he was a kind man, not because he saw her as anything other than the woman who kept his house. She was not going to ruin this opportunity by developing feelings that would never be returned. Except then came the day she fell from the ladder. She had been trying to clean the high windows, standing on the third rung and stretching to reach a stubborn spot. The ladder shifted, her foot slipped, and suddenly she was falling, a short drop but enough to knock the wind from her lungs when she hit the ground. Pain shot through her ankle, sharp and immediate. Ophelia. Adam was there somehow, kneeling beside her, his face pale. "Are you hurt? Do not move." "Let me see." "I am fine," she gasped, trying to sit up. "Just clumsy. You are not fine. You are crying." She touched her face and found it wet. "It is just my ankle. I will be all right. Let me look." His hands were gentle as he examined her ankle, barely touching, but she still winced. "It is swelling already. We need to get you inside." Before she could protest, he had scooped her up in his arms as if she weighed nothing. Ophelia was so startled that she forgot to be embarrassed, forgot everything except the solid warmth of his chest and the way he held her like she was something precious. He carried her into the house and settled her on his own bed, the only real bed in the house, much more comfortable than the narrow cot in her room. "Stay here. I am going to get some cold water and cloth. I should not be in your bed. Where else would you be? Your room is tiny, and this is more comfortable. Now stop arguing and let me help you." He returned with supplies and proceeded to tend to her ankle with a competence that surprised her. "I have dealt with my share of injuries," he explained, wrapping the cloth around the swelling. "Ranching is not the safest work." "I am sorry," Ophelia said. "I should have been more careful. I cannot work like this." "You are sorry?" Adam looked up at her, incredulous. "Ophelia, you fell because you were working too hard, trying to do something that I should have done myself. If anyone should apologize, it is me. It is my job. It is not your job to break your neck cleaning windows. From now on, I handle anything that requires climbing. Understood?" His tone was firm, almost stern, and it made something warm bloom in Ophelia's chest. "When was the last time someone had cared about her safety?" "Understood," she said softly. "Good." He finished wrapping her ankle and stood. "Now you are going to stay in this bed and rest. I will bring you supper here. I can cook." "Ophelia." "What? Please. Let me take care of you. Just for today." There was something in his voice, something almost pleading, that made her nod. "Just for today." Adam smiled, and it was a smile she had never seen before, full of relief and something else she could not quite name. "Thank you." He made her supper, a surprisingly decent stew considering he claimed to be a terrible cook. He brought it to her on a tray along with fresh water and insisted on propping pillows behind her back so she could eat comfortably. Then he sat in the chair beside the bed, and they talked as the room grew dark and he lit the lantern. "Why did you really offer me this job?" Ophelia asked as the evening deepened. The question had been hovering in her mind for weeks, but something about the intimacy of the moment made her brave enough to ask it. Adam was quiet for a long moment. "I told you the truth. I needed help. But there are other women in town who could have done this work. Why me?" He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the night. When he spoke, his voice was low. "Do you remember what I asked you that first day, if you were happy?" "Yes." "The look on your face when I asked that question has haunted me. You looked so tired, Ophelia, so defeated. And I thought about how many people must walk past you every day and never really see you, never care about what your life is like." He turned to face her. "I have spent most of my life being invisible too. When my father lost everything, people who had been our friends suddenly did not know our names. When I worked as a ranch hand, I was just a pair of hands, not a person. I know what it feels like to be treated like you do not matter. So you offered me a job out of pity?" "No." He crossed back to the chair and sat, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "I offered you a job because when I looked at you, I saw someone strong and proud and determined to survive. I saw someone who deserved a chance at something better. And maybe, selfishly, I thought that having someone like you around would make this place feel less lonely." Ophelia's heart was pounding. "And has it made it feel less lonely?" Adam met her eyes, and the look in his was intense. "Yes, more than I ever expected." The air between them felt charged, electric. Ophelia knew she should look away, should say something to break the tension, but she could not. She was caught in his gaze, in the honesty she saw there. "I should let you rest," Adam said finally, standing abruptly. "Call if you need anything. I will be right in the other room." "Adam," he paused at the door. "Thank you for everything. You are welcome, Ophelia." It was the first time he had used her first name without the Miss Crawford, and the sound of it in his voice made her shiver. Her ankle healed over the following week, during which Adam insisted on doing most of her work in addition to his own. She tried to argue, tried to insist she could manage, but he was stubborn. "You are healing," he said firmly. "Let yourself heal." So she sat on the porch in the mornings, snapping beans or mending clothes, watching him move through tasks he was clearly not accustomed to doing. He was clumsy with the washing, too aggressive with the sweeping, and his attempts at making the bed were comical. But he tried, and there was something endearing about his determination. "You are laughing at me," he said one morning, catching her smiling as he wrestled with a fitted sheet. "I am not. You are absolutely laughing at me. Perhaps a little." He threw the sheet down in mock frustration and came to sit beside her on the porch steps. "I have a new appreciation for what you do every day. This housework is harder than managing cattle. It is different work, not harder, just different. You are being generous. I am terrible at it. You are learning." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and then Adam said, "I am glad you are here, Ophelia. I mean that. This place feels like a home now, not just a house." Ophelia's hands stilled on the beans. "It feels like home to me too." When she looked up, Adam was watching her with an expression so tender it made her breath catch. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His fingers lingered against her cheek. "Ophelia," he said, his voice rough. "I need to tell you something." Her heart was racing. "What?" "I did not expect this. When I offered you this job, I thought I was just helping someone who needed help. I did not think I would end up feeling like this." "Like what?" "Like I cannot imagine this place without you. Like seeing you smile is the best part of my day. Like I want to give you everything you have ever been denied, just to see you happy." Ophelia could not breathe. "Adam, I know I have no right to say these things. You work for me, and that makes this complicated. But I cannot keep pretending I do not feel this way. I am falling in love with you, Ophelia. Maybe I have been since the day I saw you scrubbing that floor and thought you deserved so much better." Tears sprang to her eyes. "You cannot love me. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you are kind and strong and brave. I know you work harder than anyone I have ever met. I know you send half your wages to your sister, even though you need every penny yourself. I know you sing when you think no one is listening, and you talk to the chickens like they are your friends. I know you see beauty in sunsets and find joy in small things even after everything you have been through. That does not mean we can be together. Why not? Because I work for you. Because I depend on you. Because I cannot tell if what I feel is real or just gratitude for being treated with basic human decency." Adam pulled his hand back, and Ophelia immediately missed the warmth. "What do you feel?" She closed her eyes. This was madness, but when had she ever had the luxury of being cautious? "I feel like I have been holding my breath for months, and around you I can finally breathe. I feel like you see me, really see me in a way no one else ever has. I feel like when you smile at me, the whole world gets brighter. Ophelia, look at me." She opened her eyes. "That is not gratitude," Adam said softly. "That is love." "I do not know how to do this," she whispered. "I have never been loved before, not like this. I do not know how to trust it. Then let me show you. Let me prove to you every day that this is real. That you are valued and cherished and loved exactly as you are." He took her hand, cradling it gently. "I am not asking you to change anything right now. You can keep your room, your space. I will not pressure you, but I want you to know how I feel. I want you to know that this is not just about employment anymore. This is about two people who found each other when they both needed finding. What if it does not work? What if I am not what you think I am? What if it does work? What if you are exactly what I think you are, and we both end up happy?" Ophelia looked at their joined hands, at the way his thumb was stroking gently across her knuckles. She thought about the life she had been living in town, the endless gray desperation of it. She thought about the life she had here, the way she woke up each morning with something to look forward to. She thought about Adam, about his kindness and his honesty and the way he had given her a home without conditions, exactly as he had promised. "I am scared," she admitted. "Me too. But I think I am falling in love with you too." The smile that broke across Adam's face was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. "Then that is enough. We will figure out the rest together." And sitting there on the porch with her hand in his, Ophelia felt something she had not felt in years. Hope. The days that followed were the happiest Ophelia could remember. Everything about the ranch seemed brighter, more beautiful. The work was the same, but it felt different now, imbued with new meaning. She was not just maintaining a house, she was building a home. Their home. Adam courted her properly, despite them living under the same roof. He brought her wildflowers from the fields. He taught her to ride, patient and encouraging as she learned. In the evenings, they would sit close on the porch, and he would read to her from the books he owned, his voice wrapping around her like a warm blanket. He kissed her for the first time on a Sunday afternoon 3 weeks after his confession. They had been working in the garden together, laughing as they tried to convince the stubborn tomato plants to grow. Ophelia had dirt on her nose and her hair was falling out of its braid, and she had never felt more beautiful than when Adam looked at her and said, "You are stunning." "I am a mess," she protested. "You are stunning," he repeated, and then he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. It was gentle and sweet, tasting of sunshine and possibility. When they pulled apart, Ophelia was breathless. "I have been wanting to do that for weeks," Adam said. "You should have done it sooner." He laughed and kissed her again. They were careful about propriety. Adam never pushed for more than Ophelia was ready to give, and she loved him for that patience. They held hands, stole kisses. spent every possible moment together. But at night, they retreated to their separate rooms, and Adam never made her feel like that was anything but right. "I want to marry you," he told her one evening as they watched the sunset. "Not now, not until you are ready, but someday. I want to make this official, make you truly the mistress of this ranch." "Is that a proposal?" Ophelia asked, her heart soaring. "Not yet. When I propose, you will know. I am going to do it right. And if I say yes, then I will be the luckiest man in New Mexico territory." Ophelia leaned her head against his shoulder. "I think I will say yes." "You think?" "I am fairly certain." Adam laughed and pulled her closer. "I will take fairly certain." The proposal came 2 months later on a day that started with disaster. Ophelia woke to the sound of shouting and scrambled out of bed, pulling on her wrapper. She found Adam on the porch, staring at the horizon where a column of smoke rose into the morning sky. "What is that?" she asked. "The Johnson Ranch. It is on fire." He was already moving, pulling on his boots. "I have to go help. They are our neighbors." "I am coming with you." "Ophelia, it could be dangerous." "I am coming." He looked at her, and whatever he saw in her face made him nod. "Get dressed, quickly." They rode out together, Adam on his horse and Ophelia on the gentle mare he had been teaching her to ride. As they got closer, the smoke became thicker, the smell of burning wood acrid in the air. The Johnson place was a small ranch like theirs, run by a family with 3 young children. The barn was fully engulfed when they arrived, flames leaping into the sky. Mr. Johnson and his 2 older boys were trying to get the animals out while Mrs. Johnson held the youngest, a little girl who was crying. Several other neighbors had already arrived and were forming a bucket brigade from the well. Adam immediately joined the men trying to control the fire while Ophelia went to Mrs. Johnson. "Are you all hurt?" she asked. "No, we all made it out. But everything we had stored in that barn, all our feed for the winter, it is gone." The woman's face was streaked with tears and soot. "I do not know what we will do." "You will manage," Ophelia said firmly. "The community will help. You will get through this." She spent the next hours working alongside the other women, hauling water, tending minor burns, making sure everyone was fed and hydrated. The fire was finally brought under control by noon, though the barn was a total loss. Adam found her as people were starting to head home. He was covered in soot, his face exhausted, but he smiled when he saw her. "You did good work today, so did you. We make a good team. We do." They rode home in tired silence, and Ophelia helped Adam wash the soot from his face and arms, her touch gentle on a burn on his hand. "You should be more careful," she scolded gently. "I know." That evening they sat on the porch as usual, but the mood was different, more somber. Adam was quiet, staring out at the land as the sun set. "What are you thinking about?" Ophelia asked. "How quickly things can change. How one spark can destroy everything you have built." He turned to her. "The Johnsons will recover, but it will be hard. Seeing that today made me think about what really matters." "And what is that?" "People. Having someone to face the hard times with. Having someone to build a life with, a real life, not just a ranch or a bank account." He stood and pulled something from his pocket, then knelt in front of her. "Adam," Ophelia breathed, "I know this is not the most romantic setting. I am covered in soot and we are both exhausted. But today reminded me that we do not always get to choose the perfect moment. Sometimes we just have to choose the honest one." He opened his hand to reveal a simple gold band. "This was my grandmother's ring. It is the only thing of value I own that I did not buy myself. I want you to have it. I want you to marry me, Ophelia. Not because I need someone to keep my house or cook my meals, but because I love you, because you make me want to be better, because the thought of building this life without you is unbearable." Ophelia was crying, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, yes." Yes, I will marry you. Yes, I love you. Yes to all of it. Adam slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Then he stood and pulled her into his arms, and they held each other as the sky darkened and the stars came out. When? He asked against her hair. Soon. As soon as we can arrange it. You do not want a big wedding. Ophelia pulled back to look at him. I want to be your wife. Everything else is just details. They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Fort Stanton. Emma could not make the journey from Missouri, but she sent a letter full of love and congratulations. The Johnsons came, grateful for the help Adam and Ophelia had provided after the fire. Several other neighbors attended, along with the shopkeepers who had come to know them. Ophelia wore a simple dress in pale blue that Adam had bought for her, the first new dress she had owned in years. She carried wildflowers, and her hair was loose around her shoulders because Adam had once mentioned he loved it that way. Adam wore his best shirt and trousers and the look of a man who could not believe his luck. When he saw her walking down the aisle, his eyes filled with tears. The ceremony was short and sweet. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife and Adam kissed her, Ophelia felt like she was floating. This was real. This man loved her. She was no longer alone in the world. They had a small celebration afterward at the ranch, with food and music and dancing. Ophelia danced with Adam until her feet hurt, laughing as he spun her around the yard. For one perfect day, there was nothing but joy. That night, when they were finally alone, Adam carried her over the threshold of the house, just like in the stories she had read as a girl. He set her down gently in what was now their bedroom and cupped her face in his hands. "Are you happy?" he asked, echoing the question he had asked all those months ago. "I have never been happier," Ophelia said honestly. "Good. I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure that stays true." He kissed her then, deep and slow, and Ophelia gave herself over to him, to this new life they were building together. She was no longer the girl scrubbing floors at the hotel, invisible and desperate. She was Ophelia Vance, wife and partner, loved and valued. She was home. The first year of their marriage was not easy, but it was full of joy. They worked side by side to build the ranch into something sustainable. Adam increased the herd, and Ophelia started selling eggs and butter in town, bringing in extra income. They saved carefully, planning for the future. The community embraced Ophelia in a way town never had. As Adam's wife, she was no longer just hired help. She was a rancher's wife, entitled to respect. The other ranch women included her in their gatherings, teaching her their skills and accepting her as one of their own. She formed friendships that filled the gaps left by Emma's absence. Ophelia wrote to her sister regularly, and Emma's letters back were full of news about her growing family. She had a son, little Thomas, and was pregnant again. She was happy, and knowing that made Ophelia happy too. That first winter was hard. The snow came early and heavy, and there were days when they could barely leave the house. But Ophelia found she did not mind. Being snowed in with Adam was its own kind of adventure. They played cards, read books aloud, talked for hours. They learned each other in the intimate way that only comes from truly sharing a life. Spring brought new challenges. One of the horses got sick, and they spent sleepless nights nursing it back to health. A late frost killed half of Ophelia's garden. There was never quite enough money, never quite enough time, but there was love. There was always love. Adam never let a day go by without telling Ophelia he loved her. He left her little notes where she would find them, simple messages that made her smile. He noticed when she was tired and took on extra work. He held her when she cried from missing Emma, and he celebrated with her when good things happened. Ophelia tried just as hard to show Adam what he meant to her. She learned his favorite foods and made sure to cook them regularly. She mended his clothes with careful stitches. She sat with him on the porch every evening, no matter how tired she was, because she knew those moments mattered to him. They had their arguments, of course. Ophelia was stubborn, and Adam could be prideful. They disagreed about money, about the ranch, about little things that seemed big in the moment. But they always talked it through. They had both known enough loneliness to take their partnership for granted. In the late fall, Ophelia realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but had not said anything, afraid to hope. But when she missed her monthly courses for the second time and the morning sickness started, she knew. She told Adam one evening after supper. He had been talking about his plans for spring, and she waited for a lull in the conversation. "Adam, I have something to tell you." "What is it?" He looked at her, and whatever he saw in her face made him set down his coffee cup and give her his full attention. "I am pregnant." For a moment he just stared at her. Then he was on his feet, crossing to her, pulling her up into his arms. "You are sure?" "As sure as I can be without seeing a doctor." "When?" "I think in the late spring." Adam pulled back, his face split in the widest smile she had ever seen. "We are going to have a baby. Ophelia, we are going to be parents. Are you happy?" "Happy? I am beyond happy. This is the best news you could have given me." He kissed her, deep and thorough, and then he knelt and pressed a kiss to her still flat stomach. "Hello, little one. I am your father, and I already love you so much." Ophelia ran her fingers through his hair, her heart so full she thought it might burst. This was what happiness felt like. This absolute, uncomplicated joy. The pregnancy was not easy. Ophelia was sick for the first few months, barely able to keep food down. Adam worried constantly, hovering over her until she had to shoo him away so she could get any work done. As she started to show, the work became harder, her body changing in ways that made simple tasks difficult. But the community rallied around them. The other ranch wives visited regularly, bringing food and advice. Mrs. Johnson, who had 4 children, was particularly helpful, telling Ophelia what to expect and assuring her that the sickness would pass. As winter set in again, Ophelia found herself nesting, as the women called it. She washed every piece of fabric in the house, made tiny clothes from flour sacks, and fussed over the cradle Adam was building. She wanted everything to be perfect for their child. In March, when the snow was just starting to melt, Ophelia woke in the middle of the night with the first pains. Adam, sleeping beside her, woke instantly. "Is it time?" he asked. "I think so." He was up immediately, pulling on clothes. "I am going to get Mrs. Johnson." "Adam, it is the middle of the night." "I do not care. You are not doing this alone." He rode out into the dark, and Ophelia paced the house, breathing through the pains as they grew stronger. Adam returned with Mrs. Johnson within an hour, and the older woman immediately took charge, sending Adam to boil water and gather supplies while she helped Ophelia into bed. "You are doing just fine," Mrs. Johnson said. "First babies take their time, so settle in. This might be a while." She was right. The labor lasted through the night and into the next day. Adam stayed close, holding Ophelia's hand, wiping her face with a cool cloth, murmuring encouragement. He had delivered calves and foals, but had never looked more terrified than he did watching Ophelia in pain. Finally, as the sun was setting, Mrs. Johnson said, "All right, Ophelia, it is time to push." The next hour was a blur of pain and effort and fear. But then, suddenly, there was a cry, sharp and strong, and Mrs. Johnson was laughing. "It is a boy. You have a son." Ophelia collapsed back against the pillows, tears streaming down her face. Mrs. Johnson cleaned the baby quickly and placed him in Ophelia's arms. He was tiny and red-faced and perfect, with dark hair and eyes that were trying to focus on her face. "Hello, little one," Ophelia whispered. "I am your mother." Adam was beside her, staring at their son with wonder. "He is beautiful." "He looks like you," Ophelia said. "He has your nose." They both laughed, giddy with exhaustion and joy. "What should we name him?" Adam asked. They had discussed names but never settled on one. Now, looking at her son, Ophelia knew. "Samuel, after my father. Samuel Vance." Adam tested the name. "I like it. Welcome to the world, Samuel." Mrs. Johnson cleaned up and gave them instructions for the next few days, then left them alone with their new son. Ophelia tried to nurse, and after a few attempts, Samuel latched on, drinking hungrily. "You are a natural," Adam said, sitting beside them on the bed. "I have no idea what I am doing." "Neither do I. We will figure it out together." Samuel changed everything. The house that had felt complete with just the two of them now revolved around this tiny person. Ophelia had never known it was possible to be so tired or so full of love at the same time. There were nights when Samuel cried for hours and she thought she might lose her mind. There were days when she accomplished nothing but keeping him fed and dry, but there were also moments of pure magic. The first time Samuel smiled at her, a real smile and not just gas. The way Adam would hold him at night, walking the floor and singing off-key lullabies. The feeling of nursing Samuel, his small hand resting against her breast, completely trusting and content. Adam was a devoted father. He had worried he would not know how to be one, having had such a poor example in his own father. But with Samuel, he was patient and gentle and completely besotted. He changed diapers without complaint, walked Samuel when he fussed, and spent hours just watching him sleep. "I cannot believe he is ours," Adam said one evening, holding Samuel against his chest. The baby was sleeping, his tiny fist curled against Adam's shirt. "He is pretty miraculous," Ophelia agreed. "You are pretty miraculous, for growing him, for bringing him into the world. I am in awe of you." Ophelia felt tears prick her eyes. Pregnancy and new motherhood had left her emotional, crying at the smallest things. I love you too. Both of you." As Samuel grew, the ranch grew too. Adam's careful planning paid off and the herd increased. They were able to hire occasional help for the heavy work, giving them more time as a family. Ophelia's egg and butter business expanded, and she started taking orders for baked goods as well. Money was still tight, but it was no longer quite so desperate. Samuel was a happy baby, quick to smile and laugh. He loved being outside, his eyes tracking the horses and cattle with fascination. As he got older and started crawling, Ophelia had to watch him constantly to keep him from getting into trouble. "He is going to be a rancher like his father," Adam said proudly, watching Samuel try to chase a chicken. "Or he might want to be a doctor or a teacher or anything else he chooses," Ophelia countered. "True. Whatever makes him happy." When Samuel was almost 2, Ophelia realized she was pregnant again. This pregnancy was easier, her body knowing what to expect. Adam was just as excited, though perhaps slightly less panicked. Their second child, a daughter they named Rose after Adam's mother, was born on a warm summer evening. The birth was faster than Samuel's, and Rose announced her arrival with a lusty cry that made Adam laugh. "She has spirit, Mrs. Johnson said, handing the baby to Ophelia. "This one is going to keep you on your toes." She was right. Rose was more demanding than Samuel had been, wanting to be held constantly and protesting loudly when she did not get her way. But she was also affectionate, snuggling close and giving sloppy baby kisses freely. Samuel was fascinated by his sister, wanting to help with everything. Ophelia had worried he might be jealous, but instead he was protective, patting Rose gently and bringing her his favorite toys. The house felt wonderfully full. There was always noise, always activity, always someone needing something. It was exhausting and chaotic and absolutely perfect. "Is this what you imagined when you offered me that job?" Ophelia asked Adam one evening. They were on the porch, as always, watching Samuel play in the yard while Rose slept against Adam's chest. "I imagined having help with the house," Adam said. "Instead, I got a wife, 2 children, and a life beyond anything I could have dreamed of. Any regrets?" "Not a single one. You." Ophelia thought about the girl who had been scrubbing floors at the hotel, desperate and alone. She thought about how Adam had offered her a home without conditions, how he had given her a chance when no one else would. She thought about the life they had built together, the love they shared, the family they had created. "Not one," she said softly. "Years passed, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. Samuel started school, walking to town 3 times a week with the other ranch children. Rose proved to be as headstrong as predicted, but also creative, always making up games and stories. The ranch continued to grow, becoming one of the most successful in the area. Ophelia finally convinced Emma to visit, and the 2 sisters spent a precious week together, their children playing while they caught up on years of separation. Emma was happy in her life, and seeing that gave Ophelia peace. She had spent so long worrying about her sister, but Emma had found her own way. When Samuel was 10 and Rose was 8, Adam and Ophelia added another bedroom to the house. It was not for another child, though people assumed. Instead, it was for Emma and her family when they visited, and for the future when Samuel and Rose might bring home families of their own. "We are building a legacy," Adam said as they worked on the addition together. "Something that will last beyond us." "It already has," Ophelia said, watching their children help carry boards. "We have raised good people. That is a legacy." On their 15th wedding anniversary, Adam took Ophelia back to the spot where they had first talked, the rock outside of town where she had been sitting that Sunday afternoon. The landscape had not changed much, still open and vast and beautiful. "You remember what I asked you that day?" Adam said, taking her hand. "You asked if I was happy." "I am asking again. Are you happy, Ophelia?" She looked at him, at the man who had given her everything without asking for anything in return, who had loved her when she felt unlovable, valued her when the world treated her as worthless, who had been her partner in building not just a ranch but a life full of meaning and joy. "I am happy," she said. "So happy I cannot find words big enough to describe it." Adam pulled her close, kissing her with the same tenderness he had shown that first time in the garden. "Good. Because my greatest achievement in this life has been making you happy. You have done so much more than that. You have given me a home, a family, a purpose. You have given me love. You gave me all those things too. We gave them to each other." They sat on the rock as the sun set, just as they had 15 years ago. But now they were not 2 lonely people hoping for something better. They were partners, parents, deeply rooted in the life they had built together. As the years continued to pass, Ophelia and Adam settled into the comfortable rhythm of a long marriage. They knew each other's rhythms and moods, could communicate with a look or a touch. Their love had deepened, moving beyond the passionate romance of their early days into something solid and enduring. Samuel grew into a thoughtful young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. He was patient with the animals and had a gift for training horses. Adam began teaching him the business side of ranching, preparing him to eventually take over. Rose, true to her spirited nature, announced at 16 that she wanted to be a teacher. Ophelia supported her fully, encouraging her daughter to pursue her education. Rose was accepted to a teaching program in Santa Fe, and though it was hard to let her go, Ophelia was proud. The ranch prospered. Adam's careful management and willingness to adopt new techniques kept them competitive. Ophelia's side businesses had grown into a significant income source. They were not wealthy, but they were comfortable, able to help neighbors in need and plan for the future. When Emma's husband died suddenly, leaving her alone with two teenagers, Ophelia and Adam immediately invited her to come live with them. Emma accepted gratefully, and the house became even fuller. Having her sister close after so many years apart was a gift Ophelia treasured. "Thank you for always making room," Emma said one evening as they sat shelling peas together. "You are my family," Ophelia said simply. There is always room for family. As Samuel reached his 20s, he began courting a young woman from a neighboring ranch. Her name was Margaret, and she was practical and kind, everything Ophelia could have hoped for. When Samuel announced his engagement, Adam expanded the house again, adding rooms for Samuel and his future wife. The ranch would stay in the family, growing with each generation. The wedding was a joyful affair, the whole community coming together to celebrate. Ophelia cried watching her son make his vows, remembering her own wedding and marveling at how much had changed. Rose returned from her teaching program certified and ready to start her career. She took a position at the Fort Stanton School, moving back home. She was courted by several young men, but none seemed to capture her interest until a new doctor arrived in town. Dr. William Hayes was quiet and intelligent, and when he and Rose fell in love, it was with the intensity of two people who had been waiting for exactly the right person. "He reminds me of your father," Ophelia told Rose. "Kind and steady, someone you can build a life with." "That is what I want," Rose said. "What you and Papa have, that is the kind of love I am looking for." Within 2 years, both Samuel and Rose were married and starting families of their own. The ranch became a gathering place for the extended family, multiple generations working and living side by side. It was loud and chaotic and wonderful. Adam and Ophelia became grandparents 4 times over, and Ophelia discovered that grandchildren were an entirely new kind of joy. She could spoil them and play with them and then hand them back when they got fussy. She told them stories about the old days, about how she and their grandfather had met. "You were a princess," the oldest grandchild, a little girl named Sarah, declared. "Not quite," Ophelia laughed. "I was a hotel maid. But Grandpa saw you were a princess inside. That is what Mama says." Ophelia looked at Adam, who was holding his youngest grandchild and grinning. "Your mama might be right about that." As they grew older, Adam and Ophelia slowly stepped back from the day-to-day running of the ranch. Samuel took over management, running it with the same care his father had. Adam remained available for advice, but he was content to let the younger generation take charge. "Strange to have so much free time," Adam said one afternoon. They were on the porch, as always, watching the grandchildren play. "What shall we do with it?" Ophelia asked. "Whatever we want. That is the beauty of it." They spent their days doing simple things, working in the garden together, taking long rides across the property, reading, talking. After a lifetime of hard work, they had earned their rest. On their 30th wedding anniversary, the family threw them a large party. Friends and neighbors from all over came to celebrate. There were speeches and toasts, stories shared about the couple who had built something lasting. 30 years, Adam said in his speech, his arm around Ophelia. 30 years since I saw this beautiful woman on her knees scrubbing a floor and knew I had to find a way to make her life better. I thought I was rescuing her. Turns out she was rescuing me. Everything good in my life traces back to her saying yes that day. Yes to the job, yes to the marriage, yes to building this life together. Ophelia, you are my home. You always have been. There was not a dry eye in the room. More years passed, bringing the inevitable challenges of aging. Adam developed arthritis that made riding painful. Ophelia's eyesight faded, making the fine needlework she loved difficult. But they adapted, finding new ways to fill their days. They celebrated Samuel's son taking over the ranch at 25, the third generation to work the land Adam had started with almost nothing. They attended Rose's children's graduations and weddings. They welcomed great-grandchildren, tiny lives that connected them to a future they would never see but had helped build. "We have been so blessed," Ophelia said one evening. She was in her 70s now, her hair silver and her face lined, but still beautiful to Adam. "We have," Adam agreed. He was grayer and slower, but his eyes were still kind, still full of love when he looked at her. "I would not change a single thing. Not even meeting me when I was scrubbing that floor. You could have married someone who came to you with land, money, connections, and missed out on you. Never." He took her hand, his grip not as strong as it once was but still sure. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Ophelia Vance. You always have been. You always will be." They sat together as the sun set, comfortable in the silence, still in love after all these years. The ranch bustled around them with life and activity, the legacy they had built together. Children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all carrying forward the love and values that Adam and Ophelia had instilled. It was a good life, a full life. A life that had started with a simple act of kindness. A cowboy offering a woman scrubbing floors a home without conditions, and that woman being brave enough to accept. That decision, made in a moment, had rippled out across decades, creating families and futures and a love story that would be told for generations. The ranch would endure. The family would continue. But at the center of it all always was the love between two people who had found each other when they needed it most. Adam and Ophelia lived well into their 80s, their health gradually declining, but their love never wavering. They spent their final years surrounded by family, content in the knowledge that they had built something meaningful that would outlast them. When Adam passed away peacefully in his sleep at 86, Ophelia held his hand and whispered all the things she had spent a lifetime showing him. That he was loved, that he was valued, that he had made her life beautiful. Samuel and Rose were there, along with many of the grandchildren, and they all said goodbye to a man who had lived with integrity and love. Ophelia lived another 2 years, long enough to see another great-grandchild born, long enough to finish the quilt she was making for Rose's daughter, long enough to write letters to each of her children and grandchildren telling them how proud she was. When she finally followed Adam, passing in her sleep as he had, the family mourned but also celebrated. She had lived a full, rich life, loved and loving until the very end. They buried her next to Adam on the ranch, on a hill overlooking the land they had built together. The simple headstones read, "Adam Vance, beloved husband, father, grandfather, he built a home with love. Ophelia Crawford Vance, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she made a house a home." The ranch continued, generation after generation, each one adding their own chapter to the story. But the foundation remained the same. The love between a cowboy and a woman scrubbing floors, who found each other in the wild territory of New Mexico in 1878 and built a life that would echo through time. Their story was told often around the family table, a reminder of where they had come from and what was possible when two people committed to building something together. It was a story of kindness and courage, of taking chances and honoring commitments, of love that endured through hardship and triumph alike. In the end, what Adam and Ophelia had built was more than a successful ranch or a large family. They had built a legacy of love, showing everyone who came after them what was possible when you valued people over profit, when you chose partnership over pride, when you loved without conditions. The house still stood, expanded and renovated over the years, but still recognizable. The porch where they had spent so many evenings remained, and family members still gathered there, still watched the sunset, still told stories about the couple who had started it all. And sometimes, when the wind blew just right and the light hit just so, you could almost see them there. Adam and Ophelia, young again, holding hands and looking out over their land with hope and love, and the bone-deep satisfaction of knowing they had built something good. The story of how a cowboy offered a woman scrubbing floors a home without conditions, and how she accepted and they fell in love, lived on. It was passed down through generations, a reminder that kindness matters, that love can transform lives, and that the smallest acts of compassion can ripple out to create legacies that last forever. The ranch prospered under each new generation, but they all knew the truth. The real treasure was not the land or the cattle or the money in the bank. The real treasure was the love story that had started it all, the foundation upon which everything else was built. Adam and Ophelia had taken a chance on each other when they both had nothing, and together they had created everything. Their story was proof that love could conquer loneliness, that partnership could overcome hardship, and that two people committed to each other could build something beautiful that would outlast them both. It was a story with a happy ending, not because everything was easy, but because they faced the hard things together. It was a story of two people who chose each other every single day, who built their happiness brick by brick, decision by decision, moment by moment. And it all started on a hotel floor with a young woman scrubbing away at stubborn stains, and a cowboy who saw not a maid, but a person deserving of respect, dignity, and love. He offered her a home without conditions, and she gave him her heart without reservations. That was how love stories should be, honest and real, and built on a foundation of mutual respect and care. That was what Adam and Ophelia had shown everyone who knew them. That was their legacy. The sun set over the ranch, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, the same colors Adam and Ophelia had watched together for over 60 years. The land stretched out, vast and beautiful, home to a family that knew how to love because two people had shown them how. It was a good ending. A happy ending. An ending that was really just another beginning as the family continued the work Adam and Ophelia had started, carrying their love forward into the future. The story was complete. The circle was closed. And somewhere, in the way the wind whispered through the grass, and the way the light danced across the hills, Adam and Ophelia's love lived on, eternal and unchanging, a testament to what was possible when two people were brave enough to take a chance on love.